On today's episode of PermitFlow Presents, I've got a very special guest with me here, joining from PermitFlow. Please welcome Chad, who's the head of growth. Now, for all of you who don't know, PermitFlow is pretty much the nation's leading permit application and management platform. And what they do is they help builders across the country to simplify and speed up the process of obtaining construction permits. Chad, it's an honor to have you here on today's show with us. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate being here. It's exciting to always be doing something like this. So it's a good way to start the morning.
Yeah, definitely. Love the attitude. Love it. All right. So for all of our listeners out there, who don't know about PermitFlow, what is it that you guys, do overall?
Yeah. So permitting is something that is required in the country by pretty much every city, county, municipality to build a structure. So if you look around you, you see the walls, the road, whatever it is, all of that had to go through a permitting process, for better or for worse. Most of the time, it's usually for worse. It's a pretty archaic, pretty painful process, takes a lot of time. It's relatively complex no matter where it's at. And PermitFlow is the first tech forward solution to help end-to-end permitting. So if you're a construction company, a home builder, a general contractor, maybe you're redoing pools in Southern California, it doesn't really matter. As long as you're touching the permitting process, we offer a tech-first solution to help with the identification and the applications for those permits, but also the follow through, which is kind of the unique value add there, because we try to herd a lot of municipal cats into the platform and make it life a lot easier for the people who need those permits.
Yeah, definitely. And this is such a great tool. And I say this mainly because I used to work for a healthcare architect firm, and I know the nightmare of having to get all of these permits and then
you've been in it.
Yeah. So
okay.
I know exactly the pain and all of the stress that comes into this, because it's like, depending on the state. And for instance, California has some of the most insane permit regulations that you have to follow. So if it's a hospital, or if you're doing, a self-storage, or, a commercial building, it all depends. So I completely understand where you're coming from. So this tool is literally the answer for so many small builders and construction firms, honestly.
California is a rough place to be if you're pulling those permits. So
yeah.
I'm glad you made it out in one piece.
Oh yeah, exactly. Definitely. So now, what would you say are the top client acquisition channels? I mean, would it be digital marketing, inbound? I know with being head of growth, it seems like you do a lot. So what is it that you are mainly focusing on for the client acquisition channels overall?
Yeah, I mean, to be clear too, we're a year into this. The product formally launched last year at the end of April. We are still really discovering a lot of our channels. That is to say that we are seeing a lot of success across the board, and it really is kind of an idea on trying to derive where the best acquisition of our ideal customers are coming from. I would say probably the one that has the most indication and also takes the most time and love and curation is partnerships, right? Partnerships is partially my background professionally, but also something where if you actually offer something that is a mutually equitable solution for everyone involved, that can turn out to be a very, very powerful channel. We of course tap into the table stakes channels. Paid search, we're seeing some good indicators there, especially since we can really double click into our target markets. We have certain states that are busier than others, certain states where we have a little bit more expertise in that we can really capitalize on. And frankly, certain states where, the pain in permitting is greater. So California is going to be, a little bit more of a headache than, say, rural Idaho, right? So, paid search allows us to really, really get in and deliver the right message to the right people within those demographics, within those areas. The other one that of course I think we're spending the most time on, especially in the summer season, is conferences and trade shows. Though, one thing about permitting is it's often related to people in the construction space, and that has a much more handshake and smile kind of way of doing business than I think say your typical e-com purchase, right? That there's not a lot of online trust that's built. There's a certain limit there There's a lot though that is when you can actually see the whites in their eyes, right? So we found that conferences can be very, very beneficial. Again, this is our first kind of full year of a full slate of conferences though. So we're also figuring out how to really kind of dial those in and tailor them in to what it is we need. Last week, actually, we had a duo of very, very successful conferences, one in Phoenix and one in California. And it just, it proved that I think a lot of people were missing those during the pandemic, and we're able to derive a lot of good conversations and business from them.
Yeah, definitely, especially in the construction industry. Trade shows is where it's at. Honestly, like that's how you get your your partnerships. You were saying your word of mouth. So I totally get it. So my next question is, what would you say in terms of like your company website, PermitFlow? What would you say are the major strengths of the website, and then areas of improvement for the website?
Yeah, so websites are this living, breathing thing, right? They're never done evolving. Strengths right now is that we've got it to be very responsive. We hit a core message. We have just actually replaced all of our forms, and I know this is fundamental, but it always makes things so big, right? So big, at least in terms of the impact. So we updated our forms from what was it? A type form to HubSpot. So we're directly integrated with our CRM, and we can start to customize and qualify the questions that we have that are coming in, and that works seamlessly. It's all responsive. So we're doing well there. I think the thing that we really need to do is align the website more with the ICP that we have as we grow out, right? So the more that we understand that we need to tailor towards certain demographics, the more we actually need to have that content based on, supporting what they need to see. I don't have some like mystical universal answer or anything like it's pretty basic stuff, right? And a lot of times it's just about finding the time. And so I think really one of the next major steps that we need to do is have a broader kind of like, who is PermitFlow built for? And then cater to the specific demographics that we find we're selling to and have the most need, but have different things and those needs being addressed by PermitFlow. So that's probably the next iteration over the summer, and what keeps me employed, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely. But it's good that you can see, okay, this is where we need to be able to, push our efforts forward, and where we can be able to like be a solution for, this certain demographic or certain market that's lacking a certain thing that they need. So I think that's great.
Yeah, I'll just say on websites really quickly too. It's interesting. I think there's two trains of thoughts, right? There's usually people who are, set it and largely forget it, right? Does the job, checks the boxes. That's great. Maybe adjust some content or some, copy, and keep your SEO a little bit more relevant because you're giving something for Google to crawl that's a little bit new. And then there's those who are like constantly A/B testing and changing the content, in ways that are more than just a small tweaks, right? Like they're methodical and beholden to a bigger strategy. And we definitely want to move to that. A prior job, I worked at a fintech company called Divvy. They got acquired by a public company called Bill.com, but they were so good about keeping their website fluid and dynamic and up to date, and having it be based around certain tests and ideologies around what they wanted to try to do though. So I if time allowed, I would love to fall in that camp far more than we are currently sitting. But that is the ultimate goal.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Now we're going to switch gears, and we're going to talk about you as a leader. So what does an average day look like for you?
I mean, I'll use the term herding the cats, right? A lot of things going on. The proverbial saying, a lot of hats to wear in a startup, is definitely true. This comes in, there's a lot of emphasis on reporting right now, right? We want to make sure that anything that's expended, whether that's capital or time, is resulting in something that is worthwhile, right? And that it has a positive impact on the business. And if it doesn't, then we either change or adjust or stop doing that. But probably more importantly is, if we don't know, you build out the infrastructure to do just that, right? So a lot of my time right now is spent in HubSpot. We have, for a smaller company, a very, very robust HubSpot build, right? Like we now have very, very accurate line of sights on basically all the activity we do, the leads, the values that they have, the projections, and making sure that we can basically track any sort of channel and even activity down to the point where we can tell, is this worth our time or not? And, that doesn't mean we're afraid to take risks and experiment with new things. But we also need to have kind of the element of having a cutoff in there, right? Like if we know that this had the effort or the money spent on it, does it work? Great. And how do we define that? And if it doesn't work, how do we define that as well? So a lot of my day is in that. A lot of it is also coordinating really, really heavily with the sales team, right? I'm a firm believer, very firm believer, that sales and marketing and even customer success or client success are three legs of the same stool, right? There's a lot of places where you'll find that they kind of live in their own little like siloed worlds and they talk to each other, but they have their independent goals and operations. Or you'll find that, the company has them rolling up under a revenue org, like a singular thing that impacts your revenue number. And they all support it as a way that is intertwined and entangled. And while they are their own separate departments, they're still working together. And so we're trying to form that. And that means that there's a lot of coordination, just loads of coordination with not just sales leadership, but the individual reps and, our ops people who are helping with the actual success of the client and making sure that, there's line of sight into everything from the very first touch point of a customer down to, are we actually getting their permits pulled and in hand? And it's a just simple theory, right? It's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But it's really hard in execution, right? It's easy to get in your swim lane and your focus and trying to prevent that, I think, is something that not just me, but a lot of our team spends time doing in order to make sure that, we have a very, very holistic kind of thumb on the pulse of what's going on with bringing people into PermitFlow and making them successful.
No, definitely. And I love how you summed it up where, customer success, marketing, and sales, are part of the same stool. Because I think with any company, that's very true because all of their efforts go hand in hand in being able to help, reach like the end goal or what like for quarterly goals or OKRs that are necessary. So totally agree with you.
Yeah, I think it's really easy to settle in. I think I use the term swim lanes, but you just kind of have like your focus, like marketing hits their goals with their leads, their ops generated or whatever it may be, and CS has their metrics, and it's easy to focus kind of solely on that. And that may certainly work, and that structure may be totally fine for some companies. I do think that in B2B SaaS, though, the life cycle of the customer and the time that it takes to actually mark if they see success and value in your business is so much longer that maintaining that relationship is everybody's responsibility to some degree. And it works better when you're all driving towards the same goal. And it's easy to kind of get, like I said, just stuck in your own little silo, I think. So.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you summed that up perfectly. So now that we're coming close to the end of our interview, I'm going to ask you some rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Shoot away.
Cool. If there were no boundaries in technology, what would be the one thing that you would want to have fixed for your role as a growth marketer today?
Again, I don't have some magical, mystical answer or anything. When workflows break in HubSpot, it drives me nuts. I would love to just have something where I could snap my finger and just get them fixed automatically without me having to do triage. So.
Yeah, no, I hear you, especially when, it's more time consuming. I totally get it.
Yes.
So the other thing too, I recently read that you guys had received an award, the Ivory Innovation Award. Congratulations, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. We're pretty proud of that one.
Yeah, definitely.
That was unexpected, but a very nice surprise.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, to be like number one out of like around 250 startups, right?
Yeah. It was, the whole premise of the thing was, an award to help in different areas of housing. And we came in for a system to support affordable housing. You get your permits faster and it keeps your costs down. And, there's a pretty clear line of sight on how we impact that. And so we applied, we, submitted our videos and everything. And they actually had the big, the announcement ceremony at a big conference we were at last week in Anaheim. And we were totally thrilled to take away that trophy, it's always funny, you have these big awards and stuff that are all industry specific. So, you're not in the construction industry, maybe not a big deal, but like for us here, that was kind of the feather in the cap. We were pretty excited for that. And, if nothing else, it's a big validator that, we are doing something that's, maybe just beyond the pursuit of revenue, which is always a good feeling. There's a little bit more depth than, catering to the dollar.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, congratulations to you and the team at PermitFlow. That's a huge win for you guys. So that's exciting. So congrats again.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. So we're coming to the end of the episode, and I want to thank you for making time to be with us on Path Monk Presents. But I also want to give you the last word. If someone were to forget about everything that we've talked about today, what is one thing that you want them to remember about PermitFlow?
I would say that. I would say this. I would say man, see, I got frogs in my throat. See, I can't even get it out. I think the best business ideas are the ones that are open to taking pain, right? Permitting is awful. I mean, you said it, you've been there, I've seen it firsthand. It's really awful. But if you can find a good solution or a way to kind of challenge the status quo around it and take on that pain and do it in a way that, can ultimately lead to something a lot better. It's like this isn't maybe so much the marketer side, it's more the entrepreneur side, but like, I've just been really shocked about PermitFlow and just how incredible the tool it's been, how needed it is by the market. And even though it is a very big, very difficult problem, it's also super incredible to see just how much it's needed everywhere and what the reaction from, basically all of our clients have been like up to this point. So not necessarily a function thing, but again, if you ever are looking at, joining another company, you're looking to start your own thing, I mean, just make sure that the product market fit's really, really there. And, if you ever need a good example, like the PermitFlow is a really great way to look at something that was hitting a very problematic process square in the nose, and doing it in a way that's, pretty future facing.
Sweet. Incredible. All right. Well, thank you again so much for joining us today. And for all the listeners out there, tune us in for next week on Path Monk Presents.